Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B, who's going to be calling in. He's actually not here yet, but I said that out of habit. We'll see if we can make it through. I was losing my voice here at the beginning of it. We had the college conference stuff come across. I put it kind of at the end this week. I want to hit on it quick before Matt gets here. The ACC got together and they voted to... he's calling in right now, so let's see what he says. Hey, what's up? I got you live, dude.
Cool. How you doing, cuz?
Good, how you doing? I was kicking off talking about the ACC expansion vote. So we had 4 schools come together, and the one thing that drove me nuts with this whole thing, because NC State voted no to add the Pac-12 schools. I think they were just voting on Stanford and California instead of like a pure ACC Pac-12 merger. And I was glad that NC State kind of stood up and said no. Because if they wouldn't have done that, the ACC would have expanded. And the key team that was driving this expansion was Notre Dame. Notre Dame's not even a member. So why did they... I don't even know why the ACC gave them a vote. Like, they should not have a full vote. They're not in the league. They don't play football. Like, of course it benefits them to have Stanford on the schedule because they like having access to California, right?
Yeah.
Having USC join the Big Ten kind of throws a wrench in that for other sports or whatever. So Notre Dame wants them, yeah, we want these California trips. We'll get Stanford and Cal. That'll be great for us. The rest of the ACC, I'm so surprised that they went along with it because it's not going to save the league. Those teams are, no one else wants them. So it's kind of like, oh, we're going to add, and I made fun of the people that complained about travel for Oregon last week. The travel thing still doesn't bug me in this case where they're saying, well, Stanford has to travel. Who cares? No one else wants them. They're jerks. Like, they were the reason Texas and Oklahoma never joined the Pac-12 to begin with, back in whatever year that was, 2010 or something like that, which if they would have joined, we would have had 4 big conferences because the Big 12 would have imploded early. It would have been the Pac-12, the Big 10, SEC, and the ACC, because I would imagine the ACC at that point would have grabbed like West Virginia and some other ones that they're talking about adding now, 10 years too late. But giving Notre Dame a vote, to me, is insane. So you go ahead and you have some type of system where a team that's not even fully in your conference could have been the tie-breaking vote is insane to me. What are your thoughts on it from the Florida State side?
The more it drags out, the more I think it's a frustrating situation because, you know, as some of the details are unfolding, it's like it seemed like, well, there's going to be either an SEC or Big Ten offer if you want to take it. And then I think when I looked at what's going on with the Big Ten and the Washington and Oregon editions, they're going in with less money. That then is that one more thing being negotiated against Florida State that they're now saying, you know, now you're coming in at less. That does that make them, if you're having these super conferences, does it put them in a position where they're going to come in even weaker? Because now you're competing with these teams that have more money. And yeah, you can say projected 10, 15 years down the road, but 10, 15 years ago, we weren't projecting that this ESPN was going to be having some of the financial issues that they're dealing with. So, I mean, I think it's easy to look at some of this and say, well, yeah, you want to make the move. And I think that's kind of what got the ACC in this predicament to begin with, because they felt like, oh, we have to make a move as some of the expansions were happening. And then they negotiated themselves into such a terrible position that now they can't get themselves out. I mean, to me, I've always liked from Florida State the fact that they play a tough non-conference schedule. Like they schedule teams from the SEC. I like that they have those built-in crossover games where they're playing tougher competition. I hope that they continue that. If it means hopefully having an opportunity to go to either one of those other conferences would be great. But I feel like the longer that they wait, and depending on what teams are added to the ACC, they may just be in a spot where they just decide, you know what, let's stay.
That's where right now the question mark is whether adding those teams to the ACC would like not take away from the other payouts too, that not a lot of people are talking about.
And you're saying that, and that was one of the things that was in my frame of mind, because we've kind of talked about how NCAA and college football in some aspects is leaning more towards the NFL, because with all the NILs now and some of the paying of players, there's players that are focused more on getting league ready, that how much of that starts to bleed into the conferences. And as the Big Ten and the SEC expand, you're now having two super conferences. If they continue to build out and cherry pick from some of these smaller conferences, it's going to eventually get to where you just split it down the middle and you're saying, here's your AFC college side with your northern states, and here's your NFC college sites, and it's the southern states. And they have their 16-team playoff or 8-team playoff, similar to what you see in the NFL. And it just becomes, that's the model that it ends up following. And you end up losing some of the creativeness of college football, and it becomes a more rubber stamp style program like what we see in the NFL.
With the NCAA stuff, though, I really don't think that's going to happen where they have two big conferences. I think right now they kind of have that, but I've said before, the way this is all shaking out, the SEC, they really can't grab teams that are worthwhile anymore and become a nationwide conference to kind of challenge the Big Ten. I think right now you have one nationwide conference. The ACC could make some moves and become like a secondary nationwide conference, or heck, the Big 12 is already right there trying to do it as well, where if the Big 12 could grab all these teams, and I'm sure the SEC could grab them if they want, but I don't think that they're at a point right now where you've said before, taking like the junior membership route, we are not getting the full payout. The big thing right now that Florida State could do if they came in, I think it would be more of like a Maryland type deal instead of Oregon, where the Big Ten pays for whatever the grant of rights is. So whether that's like $10 million a year or whatever, and that's how much less they would take. I think the Oregon one is just interesting that they even became that desperate. When we talked about it last year, the Big Ten offered them a lesser amount of money because that's what Fox wanted to do, right? They're paying the thing. They said, Oregon, you can join us, but we don't think you're worth the full share. Prove it. Prove it for the next negotiation, because if Oregon was on the plate, who knows? Maybe NBC would have thrown some more money at them. I think NBC's still waiting because Notre Dame hasn't joined anywhere. Where if Notre Dame can push the ACC to kind of expand and become more of an academic type conference, it's best of both worlds for them. They don't care if they're competing in track or whatever. They only care about football. That's why they keep it independent. The other sports like women's basketball, men's basketball, yeah, if they're good, Notre Dame's happy. They're in the Big Ten for hockey, so they have that going for them. They already have like a pathway into the Big Ten for all sports, because I think the Big Ten plays more sports than a lot of other conferences too. So having teams come in, yeah, they're making more money, but then they're also most likely adding more sports, or at least expanding. I think the Big Ten's just looking for big brands, because I went through the list of like national championships, and the Big Ten really hasn't been winning that many lately. You have like women's hockey, Maryland's won a couple of lacrosse. I think Michigan won women's gymnastics a year or two ago. And so like you have ones that you're like kind of picking and choosing, but overall it's not like they're winning a bunch of other national championships either. Adding UCLA and USC solves that problem. And so I think that's why they wanted to go that route. They could bring in Stanford and bring in more national championships, but I think they know the value isn't there. That those sports don't make money. So I think they grabbed the teams that they thought were valuable. Now it's more of a survival thing, I think, in terms of recruiting, where the SEC would only grab Florida State to keep the Big Ten out of the South. But I saw a projection, and you're not going to like this, but the projection was that there's a good chance in 10 years that UCF is the second most valuable brand in Florida behind Florida, just because of their student body's way bigger than Florida State, and their improvements in football and stuff. They think in the Big 12 it's going to carry on, where they're going to get maybe some more playoff appearances than what Florida State's going to get in the ACC or whatever. And you keep doing that, your brand becomes valuable, and then the Big Ten's getting UCF instead of Florida State, and Florida State's still left behind anyway because they didn't take the gamble right now to get in at the junior membership rate like Oregon did. So maybe that's another aspect that Oregon thought about. Why let anyone else take our spot when we can just jump in now? Because I'm sure Maryland doesn't regret it. I saw a stupid article about, hey, maybe the ACC should offer Maryland. What team do they think is going to take lesser money to join the ACC when everyone's trying to get out of it? It's like insane down here in the South.
Well, and I look at Florida State too, and right now, with the state of the football program being ranked number 8 in the country, they're in a place where my expectations are very high for them, and I expect them to compete really, really highly this season. Barring major injuries, this is a team that I think could push for a playoffs if they win the earlier part of their schedule. With doing that, maybe the board of trustees and the people of Florida State are thinking, you know what? If our football program is back, and for the better part of 2 decades, we carried the ACC, maybe we can just build it on our own, knowing that you have an easy route to the playoffs, win the conference, be undefeated, and take your chances once the playoffs hit. Whereas if you go into the SEC or you go into the Big Ten where they've already added these bigger conferences, does that lead to 1 or 2 stub-your-toe games a year that potentially put you out of the playoff conversation?
So I crunched the numbers. I think ESPN did too, because after I crunched them, I went to their website and they had it at the bottom, and I thought, what a waste of time I just did. But the AP poll came out, and next year, when the conferences switch, I think it's next year, and not 2025, there would be 8 Big Ten teams and 8 SEC teams ranked. Now, we all know with the 12-team playoff, the most likely scenario is that even if the SEC and the Big Ten grab all the at-large bids, that's only 4 teams that can get in. If you have 8 teams that are vying for those 4 spots, what's the difference compared to the ACC where you have 2 teams vying for their 1 spot, right? Like, yeah, there's a little bit of a margin of error, but you could come in and be Nebraska for the Big Ten that got to the Big Ten championship game once and has been awful ever since. You don't know if you're going to have success. I think the Missouri did the same thing. Got to the SEC championship when they got in there twice. Hasn't won anything. A&M hasn't won anything in the SEC. They would never be picked, I think, for the playoffs. So is Oklahoma and Texas going to be able to come in and keep winning? Or are they going to take body shots and never make the playoff? Where in the Big 12, they most likely, Oklahoma probably would have made it every year. Or at least 7 out of 10, right? How many have they been making it as is? So I think you got to look at it from that perspective too. If you're able to get the uneven shares, but I think the ACC shut that down, if I'm not mistaken. I think too many teams voted against the uneven shares because it was kind of ridiculous. They talked about adding in the most valuable football teams, and then they added in more shares for the Tar Heels. And I thought, what are they bringing in football? They're bringing nothing.
Yeah.
I know they're ranked right now, but in reality, if they made the playoffs, I would be absolutely shocked. Like,
well, they're going to go as far as May lets them. They're really high on the quarterback, and he's projected to be a top pick. And I think what happens is you get that. Well, if you have a quarterback, you could potentially ride him out to a college football playoff berth and maybe even catch a run. like TCU did last year.
TCU, though, I think they were more of a COVID team where you just had too many upperclassmen that stuck around too long. And those should be pretty much gone by now, right? I think
a lot of them are gone now. We'll see. But I think, go into the one conference model we talked about. Look at the Big 12. They went to one conference like for their championships and did away with the conferences, and it hurt them because they ended up having every year that Oklahoma rematch, and
I think Matt's cutting out. I think he's at the dead spot.
Out of contention.
Yeah, that's whenever they went to the round robin, but they should have just expanded. That's what the ACC's been talking about. Where, hey, we saw the Big 12 didn't expand, and they started to bleed teams. I really don't think that Florida State needs to jump right now. To your point, if they make the playoffs this year, I think they become that much more valuable to Fox and NBC and CBS, which might be able to throw them more money to help with like their buyouts or whatever. Because like the other schools, the Pac-12 schools didn't have to pay a buyout. So the other one I think was like Nebraska. The Big Ten kind of sweetened the deal for Nebraska, helped them with their buyout, and then only took a percentage of it out each year. Like the Oregon deal is ridiculous right now. They're getting $30 million, and it only goes up $1 million a year, which means they're still going to be, by the time it's renegotiated and they become full shares in 2030, I think they said, they're only going to be like at 37? So they'll be making like half of what everyone else is making for the next 7 years for no reason. So, but unfortunately for them, like they had nowhere else to go unless they went to the Big 12, which the Big 10 played chicken and they won. Because the Big 12 has been saying you can make $40 million here, and they took the gamble. So we'll see if it pays off for them. Let's see what else. Other college stuff I have real quick before we get to the NFL type stuff. I was just looking at the Harbaugh situation where the NCAA, I don't even know what to do or what to even think in this situation. So we talked about it before, but just to recap, during COVID, there was like a dead period thing where recruits couldn't come on campus or visit or whatever. 2 of Michigan's guys that had committed were driving through and they wanted to stop in to see the campus again or something. Who knows? So they stop in. Harbaugh sees them. It's like, hey, let's go out and grab a bite to eat. Let's say he forgets it, right? That's his line. This is what happened. He said that the Michigan turned in all the receipts. NCAA notices it's from the dead period or whatever. So they question him, and he's like, I don't know. I don't remember. And they're like, well, why do you have this receipt for hamburgers or whatever? Now, the NCAA isn't supposed to be able to comment on this case. All the reporters that read the data said that that's basically what it boiled down to. Harbaugh said he didn't remember. The NCAA said that he was lying about it. And they were like, well, if we were lying, why wouldn't we hide the receipt? Like, you guys never would have known if we didn't turn it in, right? So they're going back and forth on it. The NCAA said that they can suspend him up to 6 games, is what was leaked by the report. Michigan offered 4 games at the beginning of the year. So everyone just thought that the NCAA was going to take that deal, right? No, they don't. For whatever reason, they decide to cancel it. And they put a statement out in the press that said, like, everyone's been making fun of the hamburger situation. It's more than hamburgers. There are other violations from the COVID year. And so Harbaugh's lawyer's like, look, you're not supposed to be commenting in the public eye at all until it's resolved. So if we're not allowed to comment, why are you guys breaking your own rule? And so it's going to be interesting to see what happened. I saw a report that someone said, I don't know if it was from ESPN or whatever, they were saying that the NCAA might have did that on purpose so that they could kind of backtrack and not punish Harbaugh, right? Which would be a weird twist, right? They want to pretend like they were gonna go hard, but because they broke their own rule, now they're gonna say like, well, kind of like a mistrial, we're just gonna give you a warning. But everyone in the Michigan camp thinks that if Harbaugh gets suspended, that he's just going to go to the NFL at the end of the year. This will be like his swan song.
Well, that's ridiculous. I think I think the sky's falling with that take. I think realistically, it was a combination of him just being like, no, you're inconsistent on everything, and he knows the game well enough that he's just like, no, I'm not going to be suspended. And NCAA was just like, oh, okay. Or the more logical explanation, the people that are making all this noise received money from somewhere, and now it's just going away.
Well, it almost seemed like they came out and they hinted again in the press that they wanted 6 games in hopes that Michigan would just come back and say like, oh yeah, we're really sorry, we're going to suspend them for 6 games. But like that cuts into the Big Ten, like the heart of the Big Ten season. And he said like, no, I'd rather do no games. And then like it's just like a weird chicken standoff thing where, is there more? Because like if there were more, why didn't you release it to the press instead of making it look like the NCAA looks really stupid with how they pursued this, especially because Tennessee kind of got let off with basically nothing. And their coach was paying players $60,000. So for a $20 burger, it was even something like $30, I think, is what the NCAA report said. The receipt was like for $30 burgers. And so $30 on one hand, $60,000 on the other. Of course, why wouldn't they fight it? And the NCAA, like, they have to kind of walk the line where they could disappear tomorrow if the other school conferences kind of really wanted them to. They're only there for the convenience. I think they're just trying to not get any lawsuits, right? Because if they do split away, what a lot of people don't realize is how many state lawsuits have already been threatened all the time. Like LSU had threatened, Tennessee had threatened the NCAA that if they try to punish, they're going to bring them into court in their state. Like, what if everyone kind of just moves on? What if Idaho or Wyoming, schools that are kind of left behind out of the playoffs that right now potentially have a way to get in? Boise could run the table now and get in with the automatic bid as a 6th conference. Because people keep saying, oh, they're going to get rid of the 6th conference thing. It's like, are they? Because then you're going to open up a ton of other teams that are going to be really pissed if you just kind of do that for no reason, right? Because like, not only does that piss off all those teams, it kind of pisses off Notre Dame too. Because I talked about 3 teams from each of those conferences getting in. You also have Notre Dame fighting for one of those spots too, because they can't get a conference bid unless they join the ACC, which would have been a weird twist if they would have joined with Stanford. That would have made me laugh. Taking less money. So Notre Dame already gets the ACC money, they said, like the 30 million or whatever. And then they get their NBC deal on top of that. So it's not really a stretch for them to make the money like I thought. I didn't think they got the full ACC share, but it seems like they do. I'm so confused on their involvement with the conference, and I think it just hurts the entire state. Because like, if Florida State and Clemson and them, they decided to join the Big 12, they could theoretically make more money and still kind of be in the same situation where you win the conference and you're in, and it elevates that conference up. You bring someone like NC State with you, and then you're really solidifying the Big 12 as the big 3rd conference. I just don't know. Like, what's Notre Dame going to do if another conference starts taking bids away from the at-large teams? But I think you still have to give the other conferences a path to getting in, because there are still so many states that don't have a big time program that would fit in the Big Ten or the SEC. And I don't think they want to be left out, because that also kills March Madness too, which a lot of smaller schools and smaller states rely on. So I don't think you can totally break away. So we'll see what happens. I keep saying stuff. I don't know.
But you know, you're bringing up the.
I think you're breaking up again.
Where to pull that stupid move off and go. Notre Dame and Stanford go full members of the ACC, and then they tie that into an NBC deal, would that be something that would make the ACC more money?
Yeah, that's what I said. That would have been a real wild card if they did. Like, if Notre Dame came in and said, like, hey, we're convinced that we don't want a Big Two conferences, right? Because, like, that kind of hinders us, and we think that will kill college football. And let's be honest, with Notre Dame's, like, academics, even in the Big Ten, like, do they want to come in and recruit? Like, it's not like they've been recruiting as well as Ohio State, so they definitely don't want to play them every year, right? Where in the ACC, only Florida State really competes with them recruiting. Clemson as of late, but before their national championships, Clemson wasn't even close really either to Notre Dame. So you only had 2 teams for them to recruit against. If Notre Dame can pick Stanford and Cal and like Wazoo and Oregon State and say like they need some bridge schools though, and I don't know who's available right now, like maybe Memphis, some other schools that they can kind of make a national conference out of, and Notre Dame keeps receiving the ACC payout and an NBC deal on top. Maybe they're not that far behind, because like I said, the SEC right now, I saw their updated schedule, Matt. A lot of their games are going to be on cable. A lot of them are going to be on ESPN. They were talking about having an Alabama like Georgia matchup on ESPN. The ratings for that's going to fall, because we saw it with the playoffs. Whenever they let ESPN take a bid, people aren't paying for cable anymore. So instead of Alabama, Georgia maybe getting you 8 million people watching, watch it fall to 4 or 5 or 3, right? Because, like, honestly, I cut ESPN. I have no feeling to bring that back. Like, I'm never thinking, like, you know what I really want to watch right now is ESPN. Now, college football, to me, used to be an all-day event. If a lot of the SEC's kind of, like, paywalled, we'll put it, and I can watch all the Big Ten big games for free, I'm going to watch the Big Ten games. ACC and Notre Dame, if they can kind of pull one over on the SEC, they could become more of a national conference too, because I think a lot of that visibility that the SEC just locked in for how many years with the ESPN, I think they're really going to regret that. I could be wrong, but what do they have? Only 3 games, right?
Yeah.
But like all your games are going to be on ESPN. That's even if they put the schedule. But like ESPN also broadcasts other conferences too. So like they're not just going to put all of the Big Ten or all the SEC games up on national TV on ABC unless they really decide to do that. Now it's hard to get a projection of this whenever they do it, but like just some of the paywall games, like one of the bigger games from the first weekend this year, Florida, Utah, they put that on ESPN compared to Colorado, TCU on Fox. More people are going to watch the Fox game. Like you have ABC, like they're putting Washington on, Boise State and Washington on ABC instead of an SEC game. And I know this year's what? Is this a CBS year or no? I don't think the CBS has the SEC this year, do they?
I don't think.
I think it's like a tweener year. So we're going to really see how their ratings go when they lose that primetime spot. I mean, I guess they're kind of flipping it to the midday ABC spot. But it's going to be hard when the ESPN's paying for, hey, we're paying the ACC for Clemson. We're going to put Clemson on, right? Where the other networks, they're not paying for any other conferences. They're just going to show the Big Ten. And I guarantee that's going to have an effect on recruiting. No, it looks like they might have it because they have Georgia, South Carolina, week 2. This week 2? Week 3. So maybe they do still have it. This might be the last year. And then I think everything will switch next year. So it's going to be something to watch this year. Because a lot of this SEC CBS games are the highest rated for that time slot. Are they going to be able to keep it up if they're locking them behind ESPN? The last thing I saw, I don't know if I talked about it last week. This segues into the NFL. I saw a theory, and it might not even be a theory. It might have actually happened where the ESPN was going around and pitching to the major sports networks, ESPN or not ESPN, NFL, NBA, NHL, and MLB, to sell part of the stake in ESPN so that Disney's not the sole owner of it anymore, and then selling ESPN as its own standalone app. But it would just be like basically Netflix for the other 4 major leagues. They didn't say anything about college. They didn't say anything about the SEC, which maybe makes me think that I did talk about this last week. But I saw it again, and it made me think that maybe it's real. Where they're saying like that you would pay $40 a month or something, and you would just be able to watch any sporting event that you want. Like they would have no blackouts or whatever, but it would only be on the ESPN app. So like they're hoping that people that are big fans of like one sports teams, like let's say you're a big fan of Pittsburgh sports, you would stay year round because you would have the Steelers in the fall, you would have the Penguins in the spring, and then the Pirates in the summer, right? Or like I guess Penguins in the winter. Some sports towns like Boston might be worth more. I don't know. I don't know if they would have different pricing arrangements where you live. But I still think $40 is kind of high. But I guess if it's the only way for me to watch teams, maybe I do it. I don't know. $40 a month is like what? Something crazy per year?
Yeah.
Because it's $480. I guess it's not too bad. They set up to $50, which would be $600 a year. So I guess it's not too bad thinking about it. Because like if you go to one game, you're going to run that pretty much, right? If you're taking some family members with you. And I'm assuming it's like the other apps where if you're really only into Steelers football, you would just cancel after football season. And then renew it next year. But that kind of sparked me. That was Disney's response to Apple TV and Amazon keep buying games, where they're saying, instead of selling them to these other networks, why don't you just... Oh, no, my thing's going off. They're saying, why don't you just go ahead and broadcast them as part of ESPN yourself and see if it works. I don't know. Would you be willing to pay that?
I don't know if I want to spend that much, but it just depends on what the options are. Like I feel like there's a lot of options for trying to find games, and what I want is not necessarily what I want to get, because I really like the format of the old ESPN3, where they had the slate of games. You could pick up the 4 matchups and have that simultaneous cast running. And you know, if it meant, I mean, if you're paying for that, what is that granting you access to? You know, is it just one bad camera angle, or are you getting the all 22 film? Are you able to access replays? You know, I think there's a lot of factors into that.
Yeah, I would assume it would kind of be like the old ESPN3. That's the only way that they could pitch it that makes sense, right? Where if it's on regular TV, it's going to be kind of blacked out or whatever, because they want you just to watch it on over the air. So you'd have to buy antennas, which I already have. And then you would have to basically watch the rest of the games that are kind of out of market here. So like, let's say, like if I'm watching the Packers, I don't live there, so I'd have to watch them all through the app. Where if I'm a Panthers fan, maybe it's not worth it, because they're most likely going to be over Fox anyway, right? And if you're only a Panthers fan and you don't like the Hornets or the Hurricanes, what are you really paying for in North Carolina? So,
well, I think it just depends on, too, how much are you willing to tolerate? Because sometimes, just from the NFL side, you get two options, and sometimes because of local matchups, you get 2 crap games when you're like, I would really be interested in this other matchup instead. That you have to have the app to be able to access it. Because that was something we dealt with when I was living in North Carolina, where I felt like it was justified to get the Sunday ticket because there were so many games that you can only watch the Commanders so many times without going insane.
Well, see, that's where it kind of makes you think like, oh, I could become a fan of this team. I would have been like when they were the Redskins. If they were the Commanders back then, I never would even considered it, right? Because that's the team that's on all the time that you're going to watch. Now, as a Packers owner, it doesn't matter. Like, that's going to be my team forever, pretty much. Like, no matter where you move, like, that's going to be it. Because you have skin in the game, right? You're tied to them. Where other teams, it's like, yeah, I'm a diehard, like, Browns fan. Like, I know people that are diehard Browns fans. It's like, why? What are you doing? Do you hate yourself? Why are you been cheering for the Browns? Like, have you not noticed to them how bad they are? It's like the Pirates fans. They're like telling me 2 months ago that, wow, the Pirates, they're coming back, man. They're going to make a run at your Braves. I'm like, there's no way. And now I think they're pretty much out of contention. I don't know, I haven't looked at the standings, but...
Oh, they're back to dead last.
Yeah, and no one's talking trash on me anymore because the Braves are clearly have the best record in baseball, and they're on a roll. And it's like, just don't mess it up, guys. Don't mess it up. Win a World Series. That'll be awesome. Because, like, the Mariners have the best record, like, in modern times, and they choked. So you don't want to be that team. You want to be the team from, like, 2 years ago, Braves, that got hot, hitting home runs, and was, like, acting cool and stuff, and won the World Series. No one expected them to. This year, people expect them to, so does the expectations wear them out? But it's almost like people talking trash because, like, the Pirates are going to upset the Braves. It's like, that'll never happen. They're never going to make it. Are you drunk? What are you doing? Have you not been a Pirates fan for so long that you'd realize this? And those are the people that would pay $40 a month and kind of do it. I think the one thing that they have to look at with the pricing too is, yeah, tickets and going to the game is up, but it starts at $40. You know they're going to raise it to $50, to $60. They're going to try to find that upper limit, and they're up against streaming, which a lot of streaming channels are still $5 a month. And even from the video game side, Netflix has video games now added in as part of like their $15 package or whatever it is. And Xbox has their streaming or their package of Game Pass where you can just pay $15 a month and play any video game that you want that's a part of like the Microsoft network. Which is to me, that's a much better deal than $40, especially if you're like a parent and you're like, hey, I'm going to pay for sports that your kids are pretty much not going to watch. And they're going to be bored and they're going to want to do other stuff. And so it's like, if I'm going to pick one, I'm going to pick the one that keeps kids entertained, right? I'll go like the video game or the TV or something instead. And it's cheaper. It's hard to kind of justify. Like, yeah, I want to, unless you're like gambling, you're like, I'm such a degenerate, I need to watch every game. I'm going to gamble on it. And you're like winning enough to pay for it. But I have a hard time believing that that's going to be something that happens. But same with like the NFL preseason that I want to talk about here. The preseason, like you're talking about what games we're going to get. We're going to get a ton of Jets games. So you realize that. Because they've already been showing the Jets down here a couple of times. And all they do is talk about Aaron Rodgers. And now I'm starting to get worried that maybe I'm going to get more Jets games and not so many Packer games. Because they're going to buy into the Aaron Rodgers hype. And they're going to randomly show me Jets games. And I'll be honest, I really don't care at all. So I don't want to watch the Jets.
You should want to watch the Jets. You can watch Dalvin Cook.
I know, I was going to bring that up. So as part of the show, I wanted to talk a little bit about getting into some fantasy stuff. There are some roster moves that have really shook up some of my draft advice. I was looking at Breece Hall again, coming off the ACL. Then they signed Dalvin Cook. It's like, do you even go with either of them? Because they're just going to cannibalize each other unless one of them gets hurt. And in a league like ours where you're bidding them up, you know both of them are going to kind of go pretty high. But it's such a crapshoot that's like, what do I do? Like if I had a keeper and I had Breece Hall, I think he went for like 20 something last year. I didn't look it up before the show. But even that I think is too high whenever you're part of a two-headed monster that you really don't know who's going to get the carries. And is Aaron Rodgers even going to be relying on the run? So maybe you have a guy that gets check downs, but I wouldn't even be surprised if their third running back was just more of a pass catching back and they got all the points, right? In a PPR like ours.
That's one of the things that you look at, like Kansas City, where if you have someone like that you use as your keeper, and then you just make sure you draft the other one as a handcuff because you know both players have been injured in the past, it's good to just have them stashed away and just look at matchups to determine which one you want to run with.
The one that kills me too, the Patriots. My boy Zeke goes there. Bringing it back is Ohio State 15, right? I had Ray Stevenson, and he's the only guy that was doing anything on the offense last year. And I've been contemplating maybe using my keeper on him. I know he got hurt at the end of the year, but I had it for so cheap. It's like, now I don't know what to do. I'll probably stick with my boy Eckler and try to run it back. Because, yeah, I'm looking through. Like, I don't even know with how much money I spent. Like, I don't even know if I have anyone else that's more of a value proposition. Maybe Devonta Smith. But, like, in year two, is he going to be focused on where everything goes to A.J. Brown? And it's like it's such a weird thing where last year I think I hit on a bunch of guys that I thought, oh, I'll take a flyer on him. Oh, I'll take a flyer on him. I'll take a flyer on him. And then it's like hit. And I'm like, man, I have so many gold players right now. I don't even have to like mess with my roster each week. And this year, I don't even know with all these roster moves late, which players you kind of go with. Like the other one, the Colts, man, they named Richardson starting QB. That's going to be a brutal move, don't you think?
I don't know. I mean, I think they drafted him in the first round. They were all in on him, and I think we're just going to have the growing pains and build around him. And It's just baptism by fire.
Would you trust any of their guys for fantasy, though? Like, his main thing is, I don't have any accuracy. Goes out, throws a pick. Like a first drive, it's like, all right, this is going to be what the season's like. Right? I'm driving, I'm going to make a bad decision.
Be one of those guys he might be one, though, that if it's a late round as a backup, too, and you know you have someone solid as your one, that you stash him away. And if he does start to really because I think maybe not so much with his passing yards per week, but with his size, and maybe he starts to gain like the short yardage touchdown runs.
Like Cam Newton.
Exactly. Like Cam Newton. That maybe that ups his fantasy value.
I'll be honest, there's a lot of like teams that I think, like the Colts, that I can just write off as there's no way they're doing anything this year. And I'm looking around the league and it's like, all right, maybe it won't be as bad. Because last year I was trying to pick teams that I thought had good upside, like the Eagles, because I thought Eagles are going to win a bunch of games. Devonta Smith won the Heisman. He's going to be pretty good. Now it's like going back to the drawing board where, hey, Garoppolo might play for the Raiders. Maybe he will be decent. Maybe he won't end up at all. Then they talk about the 49ers last year, how their quarterback situation's still going crazy. And they said that if they would have went to the Super Bowl, they would have signed Phillip Rivers. Could you imagine? Or I think it was Phillip Rivers, wasn't it? Yeah, I think, because they said they were bringing someone out of retirement. So it's like, if you're him, don't you like start working out a little bit more? Because you're like, oh yeah, their guys are always getting hurt. Come on, your team's pretty good. Just get to the Super Bowl for me. Or like maybe I just come in the playoffs. Because like last year, they probably caught him off guard. He's like, I'm out of shape, dog. But if they're like, hey, we're hinting at you that if our guys get hurt, we're bringing you back. He'll be like 43 out there or however old he is. And we can't bring in Tom Brady because he doesn't want to play for us. But like, watch it be funny where they make it far in the playoffs. All their guys are hurt again. And Phillip Rivers thinks he's getting the call and they call Tom Brady instead. And they're like, sorry, Phil, Tom's available this year. It's like, We're his childhood team, the 49ers, coming back at you. But I don't know. I'm ready for some more football. Some teams like the Panthers just looked bad. Like, I'd put them on the list. I know I was kind of high on Bryce Young, but like, dude, he's not doing anything his rookie year. The Panthers look like they have no idea what they're doing. Steve Smith was the guy in the booth, and he was like, he kept saying like, why doesn't someone run this route? Or like, why are we running the routes with the guys going to the same spot? Or like, you don't have an outlet on this play. And I'm thinking the same thing. Like, if you're the coach in preseason and you're giving your guys no options, you're not saving it for the season. You're not saving it for the regular season, buddy. This is going to be the entire year, except during the regular season, Steve Smith's not going to say like stuff like that on the radio. And people are going to wonder, hey, why do the Panthers look like shit? And you're going to say, like, it's all coaching. It's all coaching. I knew that was a bad hire when they brought him in. Where is he, from the Colts or whatever? It's like, what are you doing? The Colts have been shitty. Why are you hiring that coach? You get rid of Matt Rule. He's with Nebraska now. That's one of the early games that Harbaugh didn't want to be out for, because he respects Matt Rule as a coach. And I think the NFL system, I still think it's a good old boy network where you don't even have to be the good coach. You just have to play the politic, and they'll let you in. So maybe some of the players don't buy in. What was it? Your Commanders you mentioned, they were complaining that Bieniemy was too energized during practice. Did you see that?
Yeah.
It's like, what do you want him to do? Hey, boys, welcome back. It's going to be a hot one out there today. All right, let's go. It's like, damn, what's coach? He's like monotone now? That's what I would be. I'd rather have a guy that has energy and like trying to hype me up. Because, like, let's be honest, you don't want to be out there running around. Are you serious? No one wants to do that. You just want to play the games. That's the entire point. So I think you're getting to the weird point where maybe the NFL, with the way this turnovers happened with like Mahomes now, I think you got to try to get Chiefs players on your team if you're looking for fantasy, right?
That's fair.
I honestly think, because like if I'm telling you we're doing an early pick of teams, I'm looking through the teams right now, I would say maybe Bills players. I'm not really sold on them. The Dolphins had some good runs last year. I don't trust the Steelers. They were saying they had to pare back the playbook for Pickett or something this year, and I'm like, all right, that's going to be a no. That's a no for me. The Ravens are changing their playbook too. Did you see that Lamar Jackson's bringing in plays that he found on social media? So you should start tweeting at him. And then when you watch the game, it'll be like the football league you like, where you can coach from the sideline. You can be Lamar Jackson's playbook. Just start sending him some buck sweeps and say, when they run it, you'd be like, that's me. That's me. Because he said he's been doing it. So you know it's true. I don't know who he's following to get the plays, Matt. Is he following like a Madden account? Is he following some coaching account? Is he following just some other random fan that's like, yo, Lamar, that guy should have ran it out. Why are you running a fade there? Fades never work.
He's back there being like, yeah, he should run it out.
Yeah, and he's like, Coach, did you see this comment by Richard Smoker 69? He said to run it out there. I don't get it. It's like, oh, perfect, man. Yeah, a great one, Lamar. We never thought of that. We never have that play in the playbook. We'll add it in. And I just don't know what to think of them. The Browns, same situation. I don't know if I'm excited on them or not. They were talking about how DTR's been playing so well that they might have to cut one of their other veteran quarterbacks. I was like, good, they all suck. Like, who cares? Who cares? If the rookie comes in and he's actually good, that's what I want to see. I want to see someone dynamic behind center. I want to see not the weird molesty quarterback that you have as your starter, right? I don't know what situation the Browns are trying to get themselves in, But you have a kid that's coming in playing hot, and it might not work out. Maybe the preseason is just a flash in the pan for him, and teams catch up. But honestly, he should be the number 2 quarterback. Because what else does Cleveland have going for it? Right? If the QB goes down, bring in DTR. Don't bring in some veteran that played like shit for 7 years. I don't even remember who it was. But I'm like, if I don't know the name off the top of my head, then it wasn't someone that stood out. I was kind of surprised, though, circling back to Richardson, that he beat out Minshew. Because I always liked Minshew, right?
I do too, and I think that he has his place, but it's just they're investing so much money in Richardson that I think they're hoping that he can win enough to get them some money.
And he's more of a statue, too, compared to Minshew. Minshew moves around a lot more. So it's almost like when they were like, yeah, we're trying to get more into the pro-style playbook or whatever that tailors more to Richardson's strengths of just having a big cannon as an arm. I'm like, all right, yeah, that makes sense. You don't want Minshew back there making magic. But maybe he'll find his way with another team. Going back through, I don't trust anyone in the AFC South. I don't even trust the Jags, and I had Lawrence last year. He started to come on late. This could be the year where he really breaks out. Honestly, if I end up with him again, I would kind of be happy with that. People weren't even coming. I was out of money at that point, and no one else was gambling on him. And I thought, you know what, this will be my guy. I don't remember what I spent on him, but I thought Urban Meyer never steered me wrong, and he liked Trevor Lawrence. It didn't work out. He didn't like the kicker. He kicked the kicker, but he never kicked Trevor Lawrence, right? We would have heard about it. So, on the West, Chiefs, maybe the Chargers. I don't trust the Broncos. They're saying that Russell Wilson's back. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I know you're getting close to time. Probably end the show a little bit shorter. Anything you want to hit on before you have to hop off?
I just want to give you the quick update because it's been a different camp for me this year. With being back at my alma mater and living out of the high school, definitely a little bit more difficult than in years past where I think my wife was probably happy to have a break of me not being around. But this year with the kids, it's being up at the school and sleeping in the high school again. Definitely a shock from what we've been doing the last couple of years. And a lot of that's just due to the fact that at the other school I was at, we just didn't have the coaches that were educators as well or had the availability in their work schedules to take time off to pull the overnight camp where we have pretty many coaches. And it's been nice to kind of be working with similar minded people and coaching some ball.
Yeah, that's good. I know I was surprised whenever you said I said on the top of the show before you hopped on that I forgot all about it. And then people were like, yeah, Matt's at camp today. And I'm like, are you serious? I forgot to reach out to him over the weekend. I was waiting for the Florida State news. And they were like big talking, and then they never did anything. And I was
that was kind of where I was. That was like they're gonna if we pre-record, then they're gonna end up making a move before we were regularly supposed to record.
And people keep asking me. Well, they keep asking me like down here. They're like, well, if any team leaves, like if NC State leaves, what happens? It's like the 15th is just a deadline for next year, I think. So they could announce they're leaving tomorrow. It would just happen the year following, right? It would happen 2025. So there's really the deadline is only if they were trying to really mesh up with the Pac-12 teams, and maybe it's a little bit more of a headache for the Big Ten. I really wouldn't be surprised to have them move in 2 or 3 years, right? When there's less than 10 years on the contract left. That will kind of, because Fox would kind of be in the mix. And if the ACC is not stable still, then you can kind of make a deal and see like maybe they don't need it. Because I'm more focused on recruiting. Get some teams more in the South for the Big Ten. I think that would help recruiting a lot. Maybe with California, though, they don't care about it. Because, I mean, like when USC was kicking, they didn't really rely on kids from the South. They were all West Coast guys pretty much. Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart, right? So you get guys from the West Coast start feeding into the Big Ten with Ohio and stuff. And like even Michigan produces New Jersey with Rutgers. Everyone says kick Rutgers out. I'm like, Rutgers produces a ton of guys. It's usually Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, and Georgia. Georgia's been recruiting there and Philly heavily. So like, it's not just all Southern guys. You think Georgia's just getting guys from the South. They're eating Philadelphia alive, which kind of has to hurt Penn State, I would think. But I'll let you hop off, dude. Have fun. Keep us updating. We'll kick back in next week. So thanks for listening. I'll go through some of the NFC teams at the start of next week, but we'll wrap up. So we'll be coming back. Go to southboundsports.com. Make sure you subscribe. And thanks for listening.